good?
We're good.
We're good. All right. So now that it's official, now that we all the secret talk has been done behind the scenes about about hot tea and cold days. I just want to thank you first of all for taking the time to sit with me. I'm a big fan of the album,
Well,
so
thank
I
you.
I appreciate you taking the time.
It's a pleasure.
Right. So here's what I want to ask first. I'm just gonna. I thought about this because I was like, how do I start this? This isn't a purely music podcast,
Right.
so sometimes I try to drag musicians out of the normal like band interview thing.
All
But
right.
at the same time, I was like, man, this album and it is so good. I we're gonna have to do a lot of the traditional stuff.
All right.
But but with that being said, I want to ask you because this popped in my head. Because I started playing guitar when I was 8. I never really did much with it, but I always was writing and whatnot. I'm wondering, when did you start and what was the first thing you ever wrote? Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote, whether it be a melody or a lyric or a song title or anything?
Oh, good Lord. Okay. Music for me started in really like when I found out, oh, I might actually have a thing for this was in the 6th grade. I actually had this teacher named Mr. Herring, and I'll never forget. Um he was a real stickler. Like a lot of these kids, it was a private school, and so a lot of these kids have never done anything vocally whatsoever. And so like certain diction things like, don't you do that right there. Like the way Southerners will blend, our consonants together, right? I'll never forget for probably about 15 minutes straight, there was this particular line of a song where he's like, don't you. And every time we got it wrong, we'd have to stop and do it all over again.
Right.
Um, and I don't know, it started with the voice. I did some guitar for a while. I got okay at guitar, but I mean, you've heard our guitarist.
Oh, yeah,
Good luck.
absolutely.
You
Right,
know what I'm
right,
saying? Like
right, yeah.
you you either eat, sleep, and breathe that stuff, or you get where I'm at now, which hi for audience listening, I'm lead vocalist, no longer guitarist. So
Right.
um and honestly I leaned into that for a majority of my life. I went to college for that, did not get my degree. I can't tell whether that was a mistake or not because I don't know how useful the degree would have been because most of the people I know who are performance majors don't use their degree
Mhm,
unless they're the one in a million like my friend Diana who's, playing orchestras all over the states. I mean, she's amazing.
mhm.
Um but first piece of music, I can't remember the very first thing that I might have sat down and like plucked away at a guitar. But I remember the group of individuals that I'm in a band with, this is not our first iteration. We've known
Okay.
each other for quite some time. And just before this actually might have been just before them, there was an individual that brought us all together, a mutual friend who actually was the reason the band even met each other to begin with. I was trying to form a band with him, and one of the first songs I ever wrote with them was like it's like a positive message slash love song. It was called Wash Away
Okay.
and had a little chorus. That's literally the line of the chorus, it'll wash away,
Mhm.
it'll wash away, a little bluesy thing at the end. And it's funny because I wrote it before the bandmates joined the band, and then when they got in, that was one of the first things we ever put together, like on a little EP, was that and about 4 other songs.
Right.
And that's probably like the first thing that ever got like officially put to paper for me.
Right. That's cool though. I mean, and it's interesting too to see to have it happen. I guess how I don't know how old you are, but that seems like it was later in your musical life at least. I mean, not like an 8 or 12-year-old writing
No, no, no,
like
no, no.
because
That was
I mean,
definitely that was garage band era, right? Like I was
right.
late teens, I
Okay,
think, when I
cool.
wrote that one.
Okay.
We didn't really start getting down into like the nitty-gritty of what our sound was going to be. Like that was before we got into progressive rock and progressive
Okay.
metal, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean,
Before yeah.
I was still listening to new metal at 15 and 16
Yeah, dude.
and writing
Come
that
on,
stuff.
man.
So,
Everybody's rocking Disturbed and some Slipknot and some Corn in there, you know.
right, right. So the fact that you did a song that had melody at all is impressive to me because we were not doing that. But
It's got to be the classical roots, you know, because that's all they teach you in school.
right,
All you sing is nothing but like melodic stuff and like, you know, four-part harmony and you know.
right, right. And so where did the prog stuff come in then? So if you didn't start with that, like how does where's the prog
It
trajectory for you?
I can't remember which band member introduced everyone to them, but and you'll hear it in our music. It's why a lot of people allude to, you know, we sound like such and such. But one of the first prog metal bands I ever was introduced to was Dream Theater.
Right.
And it was like lightning in a bottle. You know, I think one of my first records was Honor Thy Father.
Mm,
And it was like the most perfect record that could have been introduced to me because I came from like the heavier side of stuff. You know, I
mm,
went through new metal and then metal core,
right.
you know, and so I liked heavier stuff with some screaming on it and all that stuff. And then I found Dream Theater, which married like the whole classical influences that I was, you know, getting because at the time I was probably a senior, you know, going through like AP music theory and all that stuff. And they were, you know, bringing a lot of the virtuosity and bringing heavy stuff. And I was like, dude, this is it.
Right.
This is it. It's like brain metal, but heavy. That's
Brain
awesome.
metal. Right. Yeah.
You know, and I wanted that. I wanted a piece of that. And so our first record actually strove really hard for that. Although, you know, our reach kind of escaped our grasp. We didn't know as much as we do now about how song structure should work or like how tonalities might lead into something that's, you know, more pleasing to the ear. A lot of our old stuff was more like riff salad.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, at least guys starting metal bands, do the riffing thing, just riff after riff after riff,
Oh yeah, man.
glue them together. I mean, there's amazing metal albums, absolutely classic, that are just riff, 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 riff.
Right.
So no harm there. But when you listen to Dream Theater, I mean, you either listen to it and you're like, nope, that I'm just gonna listen to this, or you actually try. I don't know who. Not a lot of bands try. You know,
Right.
I mean, in the big scope of things, if we zoom into Prague, you can say there's a ton of, bands who copy each other and take from the altar of Dream Theater. But
Right.
in the big scope of things, that's not a thing a lot of people can do.
Right. And I agree. And I can't say that, you know, and I would hope never to be like a Dream Theater clone,
No,
right?
right,
Like to emulate them and lift them up and, you know, pay homage at the altar of, you know, our first love kind of thing. But, you know, the goal isn't to copy Dream Theater. It's to, you know, it's to steal their good bits and come up with your own, you know.
right. I mean, that's kind of how I think, we learn from all of these different influences, all the things that pull us, that drag us in,
Right.
and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you have your own sound. I mean, if I listen to your record, and it's funny, let's just stop for a second. Nospūn, Opus. We didn't even say the band name to show you how good I am at this, but uh this is not the Dream Theater of podcasts. This is the Coal Chamber of podcasts. But with that being said, so just so people know exactly what we're talking about, um actually that made me kind of lose my train of thought, but um it's oh yeah, it's gone, man. Long gone.
Oh,
Uh
I hate that.
what were we just saying? It was
Um, we were introducing the record and we were talking about the idea of like trying to borrow
emulate
from your
like,
influences, but
oh,
not rip
right,
them
right,
off,
right, exactly, yeah, because that's what I was gonna say, because if I listen to the record, being a longtime prog metal fan, I can find so many little things, even if it's just like one little melody, I'm like, "Oh, that reminds me of Pain of Salvation," or "That reminds me of Devin Townsend," but it's none of it. Not one entire song sounds like one entire band. It's like
Yeah.
there's these little
By the way,
traces
I
of.
I love the Devin Townsend reference because we are also big fans.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to be.
Yeah.
I don't.
Deconstruction, I think, was my first introduction to him,
Oh,
and then I
wow.
found Ziltoid.
So you went
And
right into the crazy stuff.
oh, dude, yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right
And
away.
then I had to retroactively go back and oh God, when he was rocking the skullet, what was the name of his group?
Strapping Young Lad?
Strapping Young Lad. Thank you. I
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
retroactively go back and
Uh-huh.
dig into some of that. And then we found some of his softer stuff. And now a lot of the stuff he's putting out is a little more eclectic.
Right.
He's got a wide range of stuff, so he doesn't pigeonhole himself. But
Right, I mean,
yeah,
you
I'm
could
I'm
listen
glad you
t
mentioned him because he's in there
right.
too.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it, melodically, I hear it in some of the vocal performances in terms of the power behind them, and it's yeah, I can hear all this different stuff, but I don't I can't just pinpoint one thing and say this is what these guys are doing a clone of this, you know? So, which means you guys are doing your thing in
That's
a
that's
very
probably
authentic
the
way.
that's probably the highest compliment you could pay, and I thank
Right.
you.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I kinda I feel like I slept on the record a little bit because it came out in, like, May, right? Or
It
in the
came out a
middle.
little under the radar, friend. We have
Okay,
done
so it's not just my fault.
zero paid promotion. We're not signed under anyone as of yet.
Mhm.
Um, so we've kind of let this thing build its own momentum,
That's cool.
and
That's
that's kind of what's dumbfounding about it, that we stumbled into lightning in a bottle, and we're utterly unprepared. That's also half the thing. I think
oh, wow.
if we had gone into it knowing this was going to be a thing, we'd already been ahead of stuff that we're working on now. Like
Mm,
tidbit for the audience, we just got CDs in today. We
nice.
have hard copies, they're
Good.
available. I'm going to try, like, because I've been trying to put our website together. I'm going to try to have that done here before the end of the year. That way people can go ahead and start grabbing physical copies for Christmas.
Cool.
Vinyls are coming. They're in the works. We've been trying to get ahead of that. Um, all all the merch, like the shirts and all that stuff, like physical merchandise. Heck, we had the album done before we even had the artwork for the album done. We were so tunnel visioned, on just getting the work complete. We didn't think about, what comes after.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then what came after was such a surprise that now we've just been playing catch up the whole time.
I actually think that's a really cool way of doing it, even if you did it on accident. Even if you can't take credit, the idea that like, "Hey, I'm gonna create the art I wanna create, and what happens after that happens." Because if you were thinking too much about like, "Here's the plan, and then we gotta get it out like this, and then we gotta
Right.
do that," then you'd have these expectations of what was supposed to happen, but you're just like, you focused on the actual art and then just let the rest unravel. It's like it's almost as if you're a witness to the thing kind of happening, even though you made the thing.
And there's really no better way of saying it. It's because you know everyone loves their own sauce, you
Yeah.
know. So we thought our shit was good stuff. Sorry, we thought our
No, you
stuff was good. Um, but we've always thought our stuff was pretty good. And like I said, this wasn't our first time around. It was our first time around with this particular group of individuals under this name,
mm,
right? We wanted to rebrand a little bit just because this sound is still different. It's different from what we were doing earlier. We had a real focus for it when we went for it. We went for it, and it took us a while to like get all the pieces to fall into place. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it was a 7-year work,
right.
and it was gaining the knowledge to polish it the way we wanted, right? Because everything was done in house. We wrote it in house, we recorded it in house, the mixing and mastering was done in house, and to put all of the pieces with these particular individuals together the way we wanted, it was a long learning curve. You know, yeah, we're in the era where literally anyone can make their own album, and that's awesome, but it's only if they have the skill.
Right.
And acquiring the skill is now the work. Like, there's no longer a money barrier, it's now the skills. And we finally acquired the skills to make it how we wanted. And so when we finally had it at the very end, we were at the finish line. I mean, it probably stagnated for a little while. And then the last 6 months, everything was set on fire. It all got done. And it was just tunnel vision the whole way. It was nothing but
Right.
focus on the music, focus on the music, focus on the music, because we had like reignited our love for this project again. And
Yeah.
I think it comes through. I really do. I think you hear it when you
Right.
listen to the record. You hear the love and the dedication that we finally like rediscovered for what we do.
Right, and so what blows my mind about that, the 7-year thing I was gonna ask about anyway, but especially recognizing, kind of coming out of the woods, so to speak, to see at the end of the project, like you said, seeing it as it was completed. What's the f what's the seed look like? Like, is there any semblance of what was finished that you can recognize from year 1 even? You know what I mean?
It it is definitely one of those things where the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Like,
Mhm.
you can listen to it and I still hear some of the parts that were being written, in such and such bedroom. Like, I still hear some of that stuff. But the life it took on, without getting too much into the nitty-gritty of details, but like, we had some lineup changes go on. That's why you'll see names credited on the record for like writing some of the stuff.
Mm.
But they're not necessarily like still in the group. Um, and then I mean, heck, even me, I ended up taking a break for a while. All sorts of different life things got in the way. There was a moment where that project was just stagnating, right? We weren't even quite sure if it was going to come out the way that it did. And we all got together. There was a core group of us. We all got together and realized that the thing that had made all of the magic, right, that we were used to, the thing that really made us fall in love with what we do was this really narrow group of individuals and how they work together.
Mm.
When we found that out, when we figured that out and we decided to take a real crack at it, that was the last 6 months I'm talking about. A majority of the work for the album was probably done in about 2 or 3 years as far as, like, writing and starting to record,
Mhm.
and then for another 2 or 3 years, it was trying to put the final pieces together, and it was like, jamming a square peg in a round hole. It just wouldn't work, and we couldn't figure it out. And finally, what ended up happening was we pared it down to the bare bones and started building it back up from bare bones. And when we finally struck the lightning in a bottle again, we're like, okay, cool. Well, this is it. Let's solidify that and let's go off to the races. And lo and behold, dude, it was a thing of beauty, and it reinvigorated me personally. Like,
Mm.
I know I don't want to speak on behalf of the other band. I know they feel similarly to me, but like, at one point I thought for me this project was over. I thought I was done. I was moving on to other things in my life, and they ended up coming to me and they're like, "What would it take to get you back in?" And that's when we started working on this group that we have. And when we all got back in, it was magic. It was magic.
What
Um, Go
continue,
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry. No,
Well,
I'm
no,
done.
yeah, okay. All right. Well, this is I just love the story so much because it kind of it shows the truth of being creative. Like, it shows the real essence of, like, it's not smooth, you think it's done, you quit, you come back, all all of this stuff where it's like, cuz you think, "Oh, I started this thing and I stopped and now it's over. Like, I'm done." Like,
Yeah.
things like we I think, we think there's a linear version of creating art or anything we do. I mean,
Right.
as humans at all, like it's rarely linear, and that's when this story, especially when a story has such like a hard like end result that I can listen to and I can say, "Oh, this wasn't just dudes who were like, we're great at our individual instruments. Let's just write an album. These are lives that like are happening and um in a non-linear way that you guys didn't even know how it was going to end up, and here
Right.
you are. It's just such it's a cool story to hear because it proves that things don't go smoothly.
Yeah. And even more than just like, you know, there was something you said that really like stuck out as far as like the artistic side of things. You can get a group of guys that work really well together, right? They just click, but they don't make good music.
Mhm,
And then you can have a group of guys who can't stand each other, but every time they get in a room, somehow magic happens.
mhm,
And it's one of those things where what we hope for is a marriage of the two, right? And I think where the real magic really happens when it comes into writing music is what each individual brings to the table, and not just as like what you know, right? But how you do what you know, right? There's I can't count the amount of singers who know more than me as far as like performance technique or breath support or musical theory, right? Just like the crafting of a melody. But the way I sing on this album with the group that plays the way they do, you can't copy it.
mhm.
And I think that's the thing that we found, right? Not only that we all love each other and we love what we do together, but that the way our pieces fit together, you can't just find another band that does it. And I think that's kind of what sets us apart. If I had to put it in one, final pinpoint, I'm like, I think that's the thing,
Mhm.
and
I
when you do find that, that's the thing you fight tooth and nail to keep.
Right, I can and now that you say it like that, I can hear it like that. Like, I've listened to the album quite a few times, so I can hear that that's what it is, and that it is difficult, like you said, to marry those 2 things, and what I really love about that point that you made is just that, everybody is bringing specific experiences and know-how and even communication styles, like, everything
Right.
has to, like, happen in a certain way, and the thing you created was is such a specific thing between such specific individuals that I mean, I think what we're talking about here is authenticity. I think that's what it is. You know
That's
what I
a
mean?
very good word for it.
Right, and I think that's what it is because, this happens, I mean, we could say, yes, there's similarities of,
Right.
but those are your experiences with listening to Dream Theater with your friends and then listening to
Yeah.
whatever. And all of this turns into this super specific, uncopyable thing, which is, authentic is the word. And it's just so cool because I mean, we think about even as individuals, I have specific genetics. I was born in a spot. I was raised by certain people, and I have like specific experiences to where, yes, there's probably a lot of people like me, prog nerds, metal guys, whatever, but
Yeah.
the the exact mix is not going to be replicated. And
Yeah.
that's and so like and I don't mean to take this out of the music thing, but that sounds like what you guys did, the super authentic, uh uncopyable thing. And I love hearing it like that when I hear the whole story because it kind of mirrors, that aspect of just life.
You don't have to like worry offending me taking it out of some of the music side of things because
Mm,
to be perfectly honest, really good music, the music that changes you profoundly for the rest of your life, whether you're a spiritual person or not, I'm sorry to break it to you, that is called a spiritual moment. It has moved you in a way that you can't describe in a bodily function. You can't. It has altered your memory. It has changed who you are and how you think for the rest of your life.
This is what we call a mystical experience. And
I mean,
this
yes.
is what it is. It's an experiential and ineffable experience.
My bass player Cole, right?
Mhm,
He has said many a time, and I love it. Anytime I start getting too like in my head about how the business should run, right? Because I try to keep us semi-busy savvy, keep us semi on a schedule. I'm not the greatest at it,
mhm.
honestly, but I try. But anytime I get too in the weeds about that, he has to remind me that we would have done this anyway. Like regardless of what the business was. Even
Mm,
if no one ever gave a flying hoot about Nospūn, that it is what happens to us when we work together, right? It's what we feel when we play live on a stage. Like that's the reason we do it. Money's just cool.
right,
It's just a bonus, right? The fact that people want to consume it is the bonus. We would have
right.
done it anyway.
Well, and the bonus and it's not I mean, yes, the money part is going to allow you to do more things and this and that, but
Right.
what you're only the only thing you're doing is you're inviting more people into the experience. Now
Yes.
now I'm part of the experience in a minor way, but I'm still like and all the people that have seen you live or are gonna, will see you play now, from here on out with these songs existing. And because these songs, like we said, they've probably hit people in certain ways. And now these people get to be part like the stage doesn't really separate anyone.
No.
We're all in this thing, in this bubble, having this experience. And what I love about it is you've just now, by releasing it, invited us in. But I love still hearing the fact that it's like, oh, it was going to happen anyway. It's almost like you guys didn't have a choice.
And that what you just said is exactly how Cole words it. He's like, I can't not do it. That's
Mm,
his exact words. I can't not do it.
wow.
Which is funny coming from him because he's so, like grammatically correct all the
Okay.
time. So
So he's got yeah, the things that make us break our own rules are
right.
important things. So, but that's yeah, I love that, and I can relate to it. And the things, anything that you can't not do, do your best to try to do those things. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
there are circumstances that make us put our guitars down or put our. It doesn't even have to be music; it can be anything. But
Right.
I love that I can't not do it. Anything that it's like you feel weird, like there's a dissonance, uneasiness in your life, and you're like, "What's wrong? Oh, I haven't exercised, or I haven't picked up my guitar, or whatever it is."
Right.
That's good. I like that a lot. So do I have real questions? I forgot to ask questions, but so let's because I think we got into some depth there.
Right.
The and I love that's why I have the podcast actually. The album itself being conceptual,
Right.
um, also allows another level of, like, how to absorb it and how to connect with it. And I don't know, are we avoiding spoilers on this? Or is we can
It's one of
avoid
those.
spoilers.
Do you want to?
I
Personally, I think it's been out long enough.
you know
And we've already kind of let the cat out of the bag on some of the things in some of our
okay,
other interviews. So
okay.
I guess spoiler warning ahead, folks.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, because you can. I will throw this out. I know it's kind of joking, but like at the same time, you can experience this album as if it's like a movie, if you'd
Right.
like, because I listened to it. I'll tell you my experience because I go to Prague Power every year, and so when you guys got announced for Prague Power, I heard the clip and I was just like, okay, what the? And then so I remember dabbling, but after Prague Power, I'm so like there's so much going on and so
Right.
many bands, and I'm just like overwhelmed almost that I kind of take like this weird like I go pure power in Prague for a while, but I'm listening to all the bands I just saw and all this excitement, and so I heard and I was like, okay, I'm not going to forget this band. I need to go back. And I kept like kind of dabbling in and out, you know? And I was like, okay, at first, I think I cheated myself because I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. I know what they're going to be like, you know? And then I kept going back. And then I remember it's funny how this works. It was Dance with Me, actually, that
Awesome.
that was just like it got on repeat. I was just like, again, again, again. I got to hear this over and over again. And then I sent it to a friend, and he sent me something about like one of the lyrics from another song, and I was like, yeah, I think it's a concept. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna sit with it with the lyric. I listened to it front to back, and after I got hooked on Dance with Me, and then I was like, now it's time for the lyrics. And then my brain was just like, this is next level. Like this is not a debut that you run across very often. And I was like, I was in it as if I was watching a movie, even though you can't be as, it's a little bit more subtle through concept albums.
Yeah.
Even with Dance with Me, I was like, wait, where's the little girl? Is the little girl, is she dead? And I'm like worried.
Right.
And so let's just lay out the concept for us just a little bit. Let's do a traditional way of
All
doing
right.
this. Lay out the
So
concept for us a little bit.
high level view, right? The introduction is our protagonist, um, young adult man living with his family, um, in a large house with multiple tenants. So you learn early on he and his parents live here, but they're not alone. They share this place. Um, it's old, but not so bad, implying that maybe, they're getting by, but they're not in the best of way, right? So it's all, trying to paint the picture that, it's a group of normal individuals just trying to make it in life. And what this young man has decided to do is he has decided that he wants to write essentially his magnum opus, thus the title
Mm.
of the record. Um, and no matter what he does, it keeps escaping him. He can't quite put the pen to paper, right? And the whole, you know, first track is just setting the stage. Second track's instrumental. It's giving you a taste. It's an overture. It's giving you a taste of all the different flavors you're going to experience through the record. It's a little, old fashioned that way.
Mhm.
And then the third record's where we really break into the meat and potato, or the third track is where we break into the meat and potatoes of it. It's where you get a feel for his life. He wakes up late every morning because he spends all night writing and he just can't do it. Pile of paper in the corner and all that. And he's going downstairs to be jibed at by his family once again for wasting his life away on this art that he's working on. And that's when the twist happens. And I don't know, like there's not really much I can say without kind of giving stuff away here. So
Yeah, I mean, it turns into, we can talk about it. It doesn't really matter. We don't have to spend the whole time on the concept, but like, uh, yeah, give us a little more. So I
okay,
think we can,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what ends up happening is he finds one of the tenants murdered. There's been a murder committed in the house, and it shakes up the whole living scenario, right? um the whole house. And really what the song is it's to set him on the path, right? It's to really show this character's progression, because even though there was this catastrophic thing, it changed the whole atmosphere in the house. It changes the atmosphere of the record, because we start at that song to explore dark tones for the first time on the record. um the very next song, is about the little girl, because it was her father who died, by the way. That's the one who was murdered. It's about how she's trying to bounce back and the main character seems completely unfazed by what's happened, even though the entire atmosphere of the album's changed, the whole house has been shifted. He's unfazed to the point where "Dance with Me," the fourth track on the record, there's the little girl. She's trying to get him, to play with her. She's lost her father figure, and that's the closest thing she has. And so she's like, "Hey, come play with me." And he's like, "No, I'm too busy. I'm working on my music." There's another girl that lives in the house, a girl closer to his age, a girl who's interested in him. And he turns her down because he's like, "No, I'm working on my music." And so, despite this catastrophic thing that's happened in track 3, track 4 is basically showing like his apathy, if you're
Mhm.
paying attention to it. I mean, it's this lighthearted, like da 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 da,
Mhm.
but he is so apathetic that unless you're paying attention, the end of track 4, both of those girls walk off basically into the sunset, and now they're gone. They're gone too. Okay, interesting. Next track, if you missed it, that's the one that'll basically spell it out for you. It's a track where the protagonist's parents sit him down. It's like, "Hey, in case you missed it, more people have gone missing. Already 3 are gone. Feel you no fear." Basically like, are you missing this? Are you so enthralled by what you're doing that Simpson didn't phase you, his daughter's gone, and now your little love interest is gone too? What's going on with you? Um, and they're basically trying to get him to come back to the living, like, hey. And then the track following that is Earworm. It's the single from the record. It's the first thing that uh actually I don't even know if we did a single. It's the one that we have a full-fledged like music video for.
Mhm.
So plugging that right there. It is basically him exclaiming the depths of his like enthrallment. It has gripped him so thoroughly that he has tuned out literally everything, and it's what's happening in his head. Earworm is the song that is happening while people are trying to get through to him. Earworm is what he hears instead. The next song after that, and then there was one. What's occurred in the story at that point is he looks up. He looks up after, being so enthralled with the earworm in his ear. Everyone's gone. There's no one left. His parents are gone. All the other tenants are gone. It's just him. There's nothing left. And, only reaching the end can save me now. Basically, he's devoted himself so thoroughly that he's now wholly isolated. And the only thing that he'll have in life is the opus. If he doesn't complete that, what does he have? Right? Trying to remember if it's within the realm next. You gotta forgive me here.
That's
I'm
okay.
actually I'm actually gonna pull it up right quick.
And I was just trying to do the same
Shame
thing.
shame on me. It's my record, darn it.
Yeah,
Should
I
know
don't
it.
feel as bad, but
All right.
and
No,
then
no, 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 no. Okay, good. I was like, no, there's a
yeah,
piece
yeah.
missing. It's the second instrumental of the record, right? And this is
Mhm.
actually where a really hefty plot point takes place, but it's done entirely instrumentally. It's all left a theater of the mind, right? We don't actually tell you what's happening in 4D printing until you get to the track after that within the realm, right? And it's
Mhm.
all done through context. It's not like this is exactly what's happened. But essentially, how we've played it out in our minds, for those of you who are visual individuals like myself, um, he doubles down on it, right? And the way Cole describes it is like when you start nitpicking so heavily that you start going for like not necessarily the thing itself, but you start tackling the peripherals around it,
Mhm.
right? Like he used mixing as an example, right? Like, well, what if I used this microphone instead of this microphone? Or what if I tilted it just a little more this way, or what if I pushed it just a little closer to the speaker? getting so meticulous, hoping that that will be what is the secret sauce, the answer to his problem. Well, he does this so much in the writing of his opus that he has actually constructed a giant device, a machine, if you will, to help him write the opus. And it has taken up, the house. He has now made this giant contraption. And at the end of 4D printing, he turns it on. He goes to set this machine into motion, and it comes down catastrophically. It blows up in his face. The breakdown, which is
Right.
the breakdown at the end of 4D printing, that is the visual that you should imagine.
Okay.
Imagine this giant monstrous machine. The cogs are falling out and slamming into the floor in front of him, and the wood is splintering everywhere. That's the image you should have in your mind. And that leads us to Within the Realm. And this is where we start getting into like what's really going on.
Mhm.
And Within the Realm, the dust settles, right? He proclaims that, that was it. That was all that I had in me. The damn thing I gave half a century. So if he was a young adult, saying somewhere between
Mm.
19 and 21, dude's in his 70s now. He's
Wow.
old. He's an old guy. He gave his entire life to this thing and it just blew up in front of him. Well, what happens when the smoke clears is he sees himself, but not himself as he is. He sees himself as an older man, a guy barely, touching death's door. And this gentleman has basically arrived to clarify. It's like, oh, good, it worked. I'm here. And our protagonist is like, well, what do you mean? And what Within the Realm does is it lets him, it lays out for him your world. And this is where we get a little sci-fi for you here.
Mhm.
Your world is shrinking, right? It is shrunken to the point where the only thing that can exist here is you. There's nothing else here. And the only way we're going to fix this is you're going to have to write your opus. Where I'm here to give you the missing piece. And what our protagonist is like, oh, sweet.
Mhm.
I'm finally going to get to do it. I'm finally going to have it. And then the plot twist happens. The only way you'll be able to finish the opus is you'll have to do what I've done for you. That machine you made, I made it first. Yours broke. Mine didn't. I got it right. I was able to come back to you, and I'm going to tell you how to fix it. But it's too late for you. There's nothing left. The whole point of finishing the opus is so that you'll have something here to share. Well, there's no one to share it with. The world is gone. Your whole world is now over. It's gone. And the protagonist is like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do then? I'm going to help you complete it, and we're going to give it to younger you. That way he can have the cake and eat it too. That's the only way we're going to come out of this. Otherwise, yeah, you'll finish it and you'll die with no one having ever heard it because your world is gone. So, in order to save the world, you'll have to pass your opus on. And he wrestles with that, right? There's a monologue between, or a dialogue between, older version him and current version him. And they wrestle with it. And finally, at the conclusion of Within the Realm of Possibility, he ends up going through with it, right? And that leads us to Back Yet Forward. Back Yet Forward, the, the way the song starts off, the very beginning of the album, right? When we're introducing our character, the first song where you actually are like in his shoes is Earworm, the third track of the record. And we describe the beginnings of his daily routine, right? He wakes up at, 1 o'clock, and he sloughs downstairs, right? And he gets down there and he's like getting ready to get jibed at by his parents, but then he finds Simpson dead. Well, the first thing that happens is he wakes up at 12.
Mm.
He wakes up an hour earlier and he jolts out of bed because it's like it struck him. He's like, "Oh, I've got it." And he rushes downstairs just in time to catch Simpson before Simpson goes to his room. Simpson's the name of the character who dies. And he's like, "Don't go in there. Stop before before they murder you." And Back It Forward is basically him going back through the entire record and undoing everything he did wrong. He saves Simpson. He spends time with the little girl. He dances with his love interest. He mingles with his parents, right? Um, and then what ends up happening is because of that, because he's lived his life and he's found solace within himself, writing his opus becomes easy. And the final
Mhm.
track is I can create and live life too.
Mhm.
That to me is the most important line of the entire record, right? Is he gets to the end, he's saved the world, right? But the thing that I find most poetic about it, and it touches on topics that I don't know if we were fully intending or not, but one of the ideas is that in order to be able to create something worthwhile, you've had to experience things worthwhile. And so if he's devoted his entire life, he's not able to basically share anything that he's learned because he's never learned anything. So that's one side of it, right? Um, oh God, I just pulled a brain fart like you. I had a second thing that I was wanting to tie into that. Now I'm gonna lose it. But then the second part is by isolating himself, right? It was a literal thing as far as the record goes, going all sci-fi and whatnot. He was literally isolated, but also as a figurative thing, right? As a metaphor for like life.
Mhm.
You know, what if you spent all of your time away from everyone? First of all, it would make it difficult for you to write anything profound, at least in art, because it's your experiences that make your art profound. It's what you share through the art that touches people, right? And so if you're just a vegetable who's never experienced anything, what do you have to share? And then second of all, if you spent so much time trying to craft the perfect piece that it took literally removing yourself from any one of, that you could share it with, what was the point? What was the point? You have no
Right.
one to show.
Right.
They're all gone. So it's like a twofold, I guess, fable or lesson. And it's
Right.
funny because that was not the original intent. In fact, the original ending when we wrote the record was going to be he gets to go back.
Mm.
He gets to go back and fix everything. And there was just something that kind of stuck in it. Like it didn't feel right. And
Mm.
so if there was any one tweak, I think, that really reshaped like the album, not just sound wise, but as a concept album, was that one tweak, was that it's not him that gets to go back. Because there's another lesson in that too. It's the lesson that, you know, we have to pass on. It's important. It's like direly important to pass on the things we learn, the thing that has made us grow, the things that are worth sharing in our art. We have to pass that on to the next generation. It's
Right.
direly important.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for laying it out. Like that was awesome. As a listener, that was awesome for me. And also I was like, one of the things I wrote down earlier was like, I want to know what your perspective of the moral of the story is, which you just gave us. But what I really love after hearing it laid out like that, n- in conjunction with hearing the story of actually No Spoon writing the album and the fact that when you told your actual story where everybody, it had its moments where people did different things and went and experienced life. It's like the idea of what we're really sharing is our experiences through our
Right.
art. Like that's what we have. So without those experiences, there's not much to share, which is where this authenticity that we mentioned comes from. But the mirroring between like what you have actually done and the story, it's like, of course, that guy wrote that. These guys wrote that story because you don't do that. You don't write that story if you write an album in 6 months. You write
And
that story if it's a 7 year album.
and Cole is gonna have to add that to the like literal notepad of things that have manifested from this record that were woefully unintended. We didn't go into it thinking, oh, we're gonna put this moral down and we're gonna use these
Right.
notes. Like, it was music first. You know,
Well,
make it what you want to hear. And it's just so funny that it's turned out the way it has. And that's what I meant earlier when I said it really has become more than the sum of its parts. It has.
right,
We keep
right,
finding these things that we didn't intend, and it just shows itself.
dude, for sure. And it's like what it's really showing is that there's no separation between the experience and the art. There's no separation. Like
No.
it is part of the experience. We're talking about it as if it's a separate thing because we're humans and we have to. That's how we, you know, communicate and say, okay, this is this and this is this, but it's
Right.
all that same experience. And to say to see it laid out like that. And also, I have to throw this in there, and I hope this isn't offensive, but
Okay.
you're like, okay, I'm like, you're ready to take it personally. I'm sorry, but
No,
the
I'm ready
no,
to hear what you got to say.
okay,
You got my
okay,
ears perked up. I'm
okay,
like,
good,
oh,
good. That's me projecting my fear of upsetting someone, but I love the end. I love the jolt out of bed and the urgency of of the whole thing. And it's got, here's what I was going to say, it's got a Christmas Carol vibe, it's got a Charles Dickens vibe. And I'm going to tell you this, that, and I don't think, obviously that wasn't the intention, but I think that's one of like my favorite all-time stories, because it's a very human story where you learn something through this supernatural situation, and then
right,
you're able to, now in that, in Dickens' case, he gave us the soft ending where the guy actually got to go back. You gave us the, like, you have to sacrifice part, like, of the thing that you thought you needed in
right,
order to grow, or in order to allow, which almost gives credence to what you said about sharing with the next generation. It's not about um, our protagonist in Opus or Scrooge, you know,
right.
getting to, eat the cake, but it's about, in your version, how do we share that? And the experience that you had is not necessarily for you to enjoy in this particular instance, and how he has to sacrifice in order to allow, you know, people to exist and to share experience again.
It's yes. No, thank you for literally everything you said. And funny note, we were actually watching that movie last night, the Jim Carrey
Nice.
version.
The Jim
Yeah,
nice.
I have a 4-year-old daughter, and she's fallen in love with it. So
Yeah, you were kind
she's asked on a nightly basis all week to watch, Christmas carols. So
right. I mean, it's got a couple of it mirrors it a
it
little bit,
does.
the only thing that I hear when I recognize that is that these are real human, like, experiences, like real
Right,
stories of, like, getting caught in the weeds and getting lost within your own life, where it's like, oh no, I don't, you could miss it all if you get too caught in where
right,
whether it's your magnum opus or counting your coins or moving your microphone the right way. Like,
right.
you could miss the whole thing in the details. So I love that.
And and I don't know how it speaks to like the rest of the band. I don't even really know if I've talked about this, so you're gonna get a nugget that I don't normally share.
Mhm.
Um, I was raised by my grandparents, right? Um, it was one of those things where because of some of the hardships that happened, in their life, and um, even before I came along into the family, they were not always as well off, right? And they might not have gotten to do all the things that they wanted to do. My grandfather being a great example, right? Like when I see our protagonist, I'm actually seeing my grandfather because he wanted to be the next great American Arthur, and he had every ability to be, right? But he had to let some of that stuff go in order to do right by my father and then extension by me, right? Because he ended up inheriting me and he wanted to do right by me. So he had to let a lot of things go. But some of what he was able to pass down to me, right? Um, an unconscious thing that he passed down to me is I'm Southern, right?
Mhm.
And there's certain things that you'll hear, certain like dialect things that I'll do that might give it away, right? But normally not, right? Unless I tell you, most people don't actually know I'm from the South because one of the things he instilled in me is articulation, right? The importance of saying what you mean and saying it accurately and speaking fluently and crisp, right? And I think it's kind of a lost art. And I don't think people give it enough importance. But that's something he passed on to me, right? And it actually affects me when I perform.
Mhm.
It is shaped how I perform the way I do, right? And it's something that I would not have gotten had I been, raised by anyone else. And it's something he passed on. And he passed on unintentionally a love for the languages, right? Because that's what he was into. I never cared for English. I hated it,
Mhm.
but I love poetry. And I think it shows up some in some of our writing. Like Cole and I wrote most of the lyrics for the record, right? Mutually. Um, as far as like what the split was, I couldn't tell you. It's somewhere between like 50-50 and 60-40. And if it was 60-40, it's probably leaning more towards him. Because like I said, the concept was his. Um, but he passed a lot of my desire for like the beauty of spoken word down to me. And I see our protagonist, basically Opus would not have happened had my grandfather not happened.
Right.
So even though he actually never got to see this work completed, right? This is probably like one of the most important things I've done in my life outside of my family, right? He will never get to see that. But I take solace in knowing that the only reason this happened was because he had a part in it.
Wow. I mean, that's such a huge part of the story you just told, and, like, just thank you for sharing that too. I mean, that's and then to hear, even up down to the precision of language and how you sing, and now that you're literally a storyteller, you're on stage telling stories, and he wanted to be this author. I mean, there's so much there, and it's the recognition that we're standing on the shoulders of everyone who came before us and their experiences, and basically all that we get is because somebody else gave us a boost.
I like to think, generational wealth isn't just the things people leave you, right? Generational wealth is their wealth of knowledge, their wealth of character, right? Just showing your child how to be good to other people. I mean, that's more valuable than, leaving them a real estate, you know, portfolio,
Mhm.
and how it affects them and what they will pass on to others. Like
Right.
some of the things we've had said from Opus, right? Like I said, I never anticipated a lot of this. None of it was apparent to us when we were writing it, especially the way some of the songs would affect people. We actually had a young lady tell us, um, how, and then there was one actually helped her overcome her inability to leave her house.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm gonna try not to get emotional.
No, that's
But
amazing.
that to have someone tell you that, right? That your art was able to impact them that way. I don't know, just the ability to pass on those sort of things even through your art. It's amazing.
Right, and that story just shows that it's like we said earlier, like, we're all part of this experience now, and it's not
Right.
just not just cool songs that we like, and it can be, like we said, I mean, it can be a spiritual experience, it can be a life-changing thing, and it's all because of just being authentic and creating what you felt and putting
Right.
your true experiences into. Because I mean, now that we've talked and I've heard, everything that you said, it's these experiences are, you cannot take them from the album. They're part of it. They're real experiences, real people. And now I think other real people are now going to mirror that, feel that, recognize themselves in that and take things from it. So it's cool because we talk about, you mentioned passing things down to your children, but you're passing these now to new people in your life,
To
strangers, and
everyone,
everyone,
right?
everyone. That's crazy. I mean, it's amazing. And you hear these stories, but it's important to share. I mean, we talk about sharing is caring. You say that because you want to make sure your kid doesn't hog all the toys, but sharing is caring in the sense that, like, what your experiences might help somebody else. These songs that just had to come out of you are changing lives. That's cool, man. I mean, I thank you for sharing that too, man. That's really awesome. So I know we're approaching our hour mark or just over it. I have three other things I want to go through real
And
quick.
I'll try not to be as long-winded. I'm sorry, you got the
No, dude,
talkative one, friend.
honestly, I love this, and as a fan of the album, I'm so glad you broke it down. I think it'll pique interests of others when they hear the story and how it connects to your story. So, but speaking of your story, I found your Instagram today, because you
Which
guys post
which, which one? The Nospūn?
well, no, your personal
Oh,
Instagram,
good lord.
but I think because you posted about the CDs.
Right.
And I was like, well, I should check out this dude's Instagram if I'm going to talk to him. Because usually I will scroll people's Instagram to, like, get ideas of who they are. You don't have
Right.
much on your Instagram,
No, I was a
but
Facebook boy.
that's cool. But that you have a quote on there. And I don't know how serious this quote is or if it was ironic at all or whatever, however you intended it. But you put just an average guy trying to prove to himself that he can be something better.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean to you?
Um,
Or is it just
a
as
lot of
plain as
a lot of artists, right?
mhm,
Because when I first made my Instagram, you'll notice my like panhandle is Filthy Rich, right?
mhm,
And there's a couple lessons that come out of this. I thought I was going to try and make music my living because music is always what I've loved, right?
mhm,
But I know that the thing that really owns my heart, progressive metal, it is not the most popular of things, especially here in the States. So if I were going to try and make money, I figured I have more than enough skill in order to write more popular genres of music, whether it was pop or hip hop. And so that was actually going to be my panhandle, right?
mhm,
Um, what I found from that was I can't.
mm,
I actually can't write it because it's not where my heart is. Everything I ever wrote, when we write metal, right, as a group, or when I write every now and then, because it's been years since I picked up my guitar, so now I just write vocal melodies.
mhm,
Um, anything that I write for our genre, I immediately know whether I like it or whether I think it sucks. I don't have to question it. I know because those other things aren't my heart, right? They're not what I do. I don't know. And so I second guessed everything, and everything I ever wrote I threw away. I don't have any of it because I thought it all sucked.
Right.
Right? And I came to the conclusion I didn't want to be in a genre where I couldn't be my own thermometer. I
Right.
just didn't want it. But the tagline that came from that, though, is still something that I live by, right? Artists are their own worst critic. And so to me, the greatest villain that I ever need to conquer is what's going on in my own head, right? The only reason I ever truly struggle is myself. And, forgive me if this waxes political, but I think that's a narrative that is a little old fashioned, like I said, raised by grandparents. But a lot of my life experience, including some of the things they tried to teach me, even though I was too young and dumb to really pay attention, I had to learn it the hard way. A lot of what happens in your life is bared by your shoulders,
Mhm.
right? And that's good or bad. And so for me, that quote is basically me telling myself, like, hey, you can do better. And
Right.
the only reason you aren't doing better is because you don't want to,
Mm.
because it's nobody else. It's
Right.
you. You're
You know,
not doing better because you are not doing better.
and I'm gonna give you some credit also in recognizing, like you say, yeah, this wasn't my heart or something. It's hard to have the intuition to even really recognize that in yourself a lot of times. And I think a lot of people struggle with, even what they want or where their
Right.
heart lies. So in that you have that ability, I'm just going to give you a little bit of credit for that, because I think that, or a lot of credit, to be honest, because that's not a that's a skill. That's something you have to learn, to hear that heart, to listen to it.
Right.
It's not something that you're just like, "Oh, yeah, it's just this." You can't teach it like it's addition. Like, when you feel this, that means you're hungry or whatever. It's like, "No, this
Right.
is
Right.
hard." So that's the fact that you can do that and then follow it is really, inspiring. It's really cool.
I appreciate that.
Mhm. So I always end the podcast with 2 questions. These are a little quicker, but or they can be as long as you want. But one of the reasons I started the podcast was to have, cool conversations, but also to share things that I like. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, if it's whether it's a spiritual practice or an album or an author that I think is really cool. So it's always been something, I think everybody kind of does that. Check out this new band or check out this show I like or whatever.
Right. Right.
So I always give the guest an opportunity to just suggest something. And it could be a piece of advice. It can be a book. It can be a TV show. It can be a song or a band. It can be anything at all. You can give a couple. You can give one, whatever. Just if you were like, hey, this was awesome, you should check this out, what would it be?
All right. This is, and when I tell you, like, I try to be the business brain behind some of the
Mhm.
band, that's probably where this is rooted.
Okay.
Um, Sorry, it's just it's a lot. Like, when I
Mhm.
realize how cohesive a lot of who I am is rooted in where I came from.
Mm.
Um, the whole idea that, you are the result of what you've done, right? I had to learn the hard way that your choices follow you. And one of the things I chose was I racked up a lot of debt in my youth, right? Um, and when my grandparents passed, right, I was always told like they were going to help get me through college. They bought me my first car, despite the fact they didn't have the money to do any of that. I didn't know that. Well, when they passed, it was all in my name. And because it was in my name, it was now my debt. And I was up to my eyeballs in it. And I know a lot of people, for those listening, I'm in my 30s, early 30s, right? I was fortunate enough to learn the lessons quickly enough and to have grandparents who had the foresight to leave me the only thing monetarily in this world that they owned, right? They owned a house. What I ended up doing is I ended up selling that house and moving into a much smaller house. One owned by family, one that my wife's family, I married into her, you know, her family, and they had some property that they were willing to sell me cheap. Not the greatest of places, but it's a place. Well, I bought it. I sold my house. I bought that one, and I paid off all of my debt. And a lot of people would, the first thing they think was good for you, lucky you. But I think what a lot of people miss is the lesson I had to learn to be even able to think that way. It's like I had to learn debt is not your friend. And even though I don't agree necessarily with everything he talks about or necessarily all of his political views, there is an individual named Dave Ramsey who talks about debt and what it does to people.
Mm.
And he was the originator of the idea of the debt snowball, how to snowball your way out of debt. And I believe the only reason I'm able to stand on my own 2 feet and be able to reason, what it is that moves me is because I have the time to.
Mm.
I have the peace of mind to, because even though I might have had to give up some things in the short run, um, I no longer have debt. And I can't explain to most of my nephews or my little brother-in-law or a lot of my friends, like I can't express to them what that feels like and the clarity of mind that I've been able to have because of that. I'm now at a point in my life where I beat myself up because I don't feel like I'm doing the things with my life I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thought you have in your 30s, or at least, you know, it's one of those things where I don't know, maybe people do, but I feel like I'm having my midlife crisis early because all of the most difficult trials I have to face are now behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to buy a house. I don't have to pay off school debt. I don't have to buy a car. I don't have to worry about putting food on my table. My wife stays home. And I go to a construction job. It's dirty and it's awful and I effing hate it.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? It has afforded me the luxury of not having to worry about where things are coming from.
Right.
And having that has afforded me the luxury of being able to think about things that most people don't get to think about. They're too mired in all of the life troubles,
Right.
right? Like it's hard to find someone you care about and want to spend time with when you can't pay rent. You know,
Right.
it's hard to figure out what it is that drives you and motivates you when all you do is go to work, go try to find someone you want to spend your time with, and that's all your time. Guess what? You got to go to bed and go, back to work tomorrow. And that's if you're not going to school on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's long-winded, and like
Mm-hmm.
I said, sorry you got the talkative one,
No,
but
that's useful.
check out Dave Ramsey if you're having problems with money, because honestly, money is like the majority of people's problems.
Okay.
And the biggest problem with money is debt. The moment you
Mm-hmm.
get rid of your debt is the moment you can start having that breathing room to really start finding your moral compass, or your
Mm-hmm.
spiritual compass. Moral is the wrong word, but
Right.
your spiritual compass to know what it is. Or
Right.
heck, even to have the time to be able to get out and go do something.
Right.
Right? Most people don't get the time to go out and figure out what they like. I was lucky enough to find it early. Some people don't
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. I mean, heck, Oprah Winfrey didn't figure out that she wanted to do what she was doing until she was in her 40s.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. That freedom of mind is definitely important. And I think that's what, so that's actually really useful. I was sure you were just gonna say a Dream Theater album or something, but
Sorry.
I no, I appreciate that. That's a really useful one, and it's much different than a lot of what I've gotten in the past. So my last question then,
All right.
and I don't think Dave Ramsey is gonna be your answer, but if he is, so be it.
Okay. Whatever.
So that'll work. Whatever you need, whatever's your thing, man. But it's based on the story of Peter Pan, and the Lost Boys are in Neverland, and they get some pixie dust, and then they think of a happy thought, and that's what elevates them. That's what makes them fly.
Mm.
So, what's your happy thought?
My happy thought. My happy thought is eventually, and I'm aiming for early to mid 40s. I used to say it was 40, but I'm not making enough traction right now. Once again, my own worst critic.
Mm,
Um, what brings me happy thoughts is that there's going to come a time where I don't have to trade my time to make money,
mm,
where I don't have to worry about whether or not um the novel I want to write will sell
mm.
in order to cover the time I spent writing it.
Right,
I don't have to worry about whether my construction job is going to be there when I come back from touring with Nospūn.
right.
I don't have to worry about if I decide to take a particular turn down this road of life, whether or not my family is going to have to starve.
Mhm. Right.
I I get the warm and fuzzies knowing that I'm working toward that and that eventually because I am deciding that's going to happen.
Okay.
Once again, if there's nothing else I can tell anybody in the audience, is that you are the reason things happen to you. So I have decided that I want to retire early, not because I want to sit on ass and do nothing, but because I want to spend my time with my family. I want to spend time working on my music. I want to spend time working on. I got a buddy who's wanting to do a business venture with me. He's already
Mhm.
given it a name and everything, and
Okay.
he, you know, and I want to spend time working on that with him without having to worry about whether or not it will actually be successful.
Right. I think that's great, man. I think that's really good. I think that's a really good answer. Um, so I appreciate your time, uh, and appreciate you opening up, and I'm excited to see you at Prague Power. That's just a personal thing. It's like, dude, that the lineup, the day that you are on is like,
Oh,
it's one of the strongest. I've been going to Prague Power since like '05, and I think this is like one of the strongest days I've ever seen. You're on a
yeah,
heck of a
dude.
day.
Yeah,
Uh,
man.
oh my God. I
I
mean,
I am I am so pumped.
dude,
I am so pumped. I was happy just to get to play, like the fact that, they asked. I was like,
right.
"Oh my God." And then I saw who's all going to be there this year and I was like, "Holy sh-"
Yeah, dude, it is stacked, and the night you're on, I mean, honestly, and I'm gonna give you, I'm equally Prague and Power. It's just
Yeah,
who I
yeah,
am.
yeah, yeah.
So, I'm in love with Twilight Force. They're one of my personal favorites. But I'm also now, you and Twilight Force are the 2 I'm looking forward to most
That's awesome.
on on that night, and then Winger on the other night. I'm very excited to see Winger. But you guys, like, to see 2 in what I consider, like, I know you only have the 1 album so far, but what I consider 2 of the, like, most promising and strongest acts from the genres that are represented at that festival. So I'm super excited to see you there, and super excited to see what you guys do next. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Honestly, there's not much. The CDs, the vinyls are on the way, working on the website, and um the reason progress has probably been slower on that than need be is because we're already working on the next record. So
Good, good,
yeah, yeah,
good.
we're not trying to take another 7 years for this one. We've already got a healthy lineup set up already. So
Right. Use that momentum to
yeah,
crank
yeah,
out another one. I will be buying a CD as soon as I see the link, so I'm excited. I always try to at least buy my favorite albums of the year on hard copy, and this is without a doubt my favorite prog metal album of the year. There's nothing else in the running as far as I'm concerned.
thank you.
So
Thank you.
sorry,
It's
Haken and Voyager and everybody. You're great. Riverside, everybody's good. You guys have the number one spot. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. And if, whenever the next one comes out, we'll do this again.
that sounds great. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
You take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening. Remember, you are always everything. Bye.